Make one thing clear. This was never just the problem of one bad actor. That sort of idea has come up today, and the facts simply don't support that. There was a combination of loopholes in state law and failures by state agencies during the permitting process that led to the Lost Valley fiasco. I want to cite a few of those. First of all, construction of the facility began improperly months before the CAFO permit was approved, but no fines or penalties were issued. Agency staff ultimately focused on meeting arbitrary deadlines to approve the CAFO permit, while questions were ignored about the likely pressure to tap restricted groundwater for dairy operations should the permit be approved. The CAFO permit was ultimately approved, and thousands of cows were allowed on site before permanent water rights were secured for dairy operations, before construction of manure containment infrastructure was completed, and before a final animal waste management plan was approved. This despite the fact the Lost Valley was located in a region with contaminated drinking water and in a restricted groundwater area with declining supplies. Ultimately, the DEQ and ODA actively promoted the supposed economic benefits of this facility despite the absence of any sort of economic analysis or consideration of the economic crisis facing many family dairy farms in Oregon. The reality is that mega dairies across the country are flooding the market with milk, driving down prices to historically low levels that are putting family farms out of business in Oregon and across the country. Ultimately, the agencies allowed the series of violations to become severe before they took meaningful action, despite the fact that many of these problems stem from the agencies approving the CAFO operating permit prematurely. In addition, and you may remember that 2 years ago we were here asking you to approve an air quality program that the Oregon Dairy Farmers Association, my organization, and 3 Mile Canyon Farms all agreed to a decade ago. In addition, that 2008 program to require mega dairies to reduce their air pollution was still not in effect at the time of permitting, raising significant concerns about the state of Oregon approving a massive new, frankly, industrial scale source of ammonia and methane emissions. And we believe that if we had approved that 2 years ago, we might have prevented some of the problems at Lost Valley. So that's what happened. The key provisions in 103 I want to call out to you, and I would also like to suggest that these be amended into Senate Bill 876, are the following. First of all, a timeout on issuing new permits for very large or industrial dairy operations until a number of significant reforms are made for how these very large operations are permitted in the future. Second, within 103, this was not talked about by some of the other panelists, but Senate Bill 103 includes a proposal that we strongly support that would require ODA to complete an economic study to determine the effect of very large dairies on the economic viability of small and medium-sized dairy farms, including but not limited to the effect that mega dairies are having on milk prices. As part of this, ODA would have to identify changes to state policies or incentives to help small and mid-sized dairy farmers to counteract any negative economic impact caused by the growing number of mega dairies in our state. Also, by 2021, an air emissions program for very large dairies that would be modeled on the consensus recommendations from the Oregon Dairy Air Quality Task Force would have to be adopted. Further, and this is a provision in 876 in part, but new and industrial dairies would be required to secure all water rights necessary for operation before they could be permitted, and the use of unpermitted groundwater for stock watering would be limited to something on the order of 5,000 gallons per day, which is what other industrial sources use. Lastly, we do support the ability of local counties to adopt stronger rules for the siting of new facilities that state agencies would be required to respect. Again, there is currently no formal definition for what a mega or industrial dairy is. Federal and state rules state simply that any operation with 700 milking cows or more is large, whether that's 700, 7,000, or 70,000. What we're now seeing in Oregon is operations that are 10 times or 100 times the size of an average dairy farm moving to our state. Because of this, some of these operations produce wastewater on the order of a city. And they pose significant risk not only to water and air quality, but also to family farm viability in this state. 2 years ago when we testified, there were 228 dairy farms in operation in Oregon. Now there's just over 200. And in that 2-year time, Lost Valley was in operation. So Friends of Family Farmers, I want to make it clear, we count dairy farmers among our membership. We've seen family-run dairy farms in the state. They're some of the best environmental stewards. Grazing animals on pasture, protecting soil and water, and caring for the land while producing quality products. Again, we're willing to talk about the definition for industrial that's in Senate Bill 103, but a number of the key provisions and the moratorium are key if we're going to learn the lessons from Lost Valley. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Evan. Amy?
Thank you, Chair Dembro and the committee.